We are streaming live.
There we go. Hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Oh, my goodness. It's just been an interesting time, right? So it is 1 p.m. Central Standard Time on a Wednesday, which means it's the Theta Healing Power Hour. And it's so exciting because I have Jennifer, we'll call her Jen. That's why she's got her name, but formally she's Jennifer Coken. And so just a reminder what we do here. As I say, you want to come to my co-lives because I know amazing peeps and I meet a lot of them and they have great information to give you and you'll learn a lot, but also too, whatever they're talking about, whatever they're bringing up, we're going to do a little theta healing work at the end, which means that it's just like win, 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 win. And, with theta healing, I always say, you can tell me how you think and how you feel. What we create in our lives is what we believe. And we hold those at a cellular level. So we bypass that mind, as I was just telling Jen, that I think I expended an extra 1% of my brain here this past week. But we bypass the brain, which allows our thoughts and our emotions to follow when we change it on a cellular level. So we're going to get some great information and learn a lot from an expert and then do a little work around what they had to tell us. So we get to talk to Miss Jennifer Coken, and she is a keynote speaker, an imposter syndrome expert, author, comedian, and international executive coach. So Jen Coken is on a global mission to empower C-suite level women and their teams to have the audacity to be themselves and to lead without limits. So, for over 2 decades, she has been empowering them to achieve both personal and professional success. Welcome, Miss Jennifer.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I love that we're both wearing hot pink today.
I was saying, I never wear pink. I always wear black, and I just felt like wearing pink. And then Jen got the psychic memo,
I
and
did.
she had it on as well. I just don't have the beautiful necklace that she has on, or the beautiful art. But that's why we get to focus on her because she has the beauty on her side. So thank you so much for being my featured speaker here. And you know what, Jen, let me scroll on down here so I can stay on point here. So I think it's really amazing. And I just have to say that we're in a time right now where people really having to do some reflection. And we're talking about imposter syndrome. So I feel like that people have had plenty of time to be able to see where some, you know, not matching, right? Some imbalances are happening. So, Jen, how does somebody know if they have imposter syndrome?
It's a good question. Everybody does. So let me say something about that, which is, and you've probably said this on your previous Facebook Live. So let's talk a little bit about neuroscience here. Our brain's job is to keep the thing it's a brain of alive, which is you. Your brain's job is to keep you alive. My brain's job is to keep me alive. And how it does that is to predict threat and the level of threat. That's our amygdala, right? That governs our fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. That's been there since we were cave people. And why we're here and cave woman, ooga, 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 isn't, because she got eaten. And that's the thing the brain's trying to figure out. Can I eat it or is it going to eat me? What's the level of threat? But the brain doesn't know the distinction between real or perceived. So if you've ever been in one of those, when we used to be able to go to the movies and could go see an IMAX movie, and maybe you were watching one about people rappelling down a mountain and you're thinking you're there and about to fall and you have that jerky motion because your brain can't discern. So especially now in this time of the pandemic and COVID, where it's like our own foundation and our own platelets are shifting and changing, that stirs up the brain's fight, flight, or freeze response. How am I going to deal with my kids being back in school, homeschooling them? Somebody's sick in my family. How do we keep in business? How do we move from meeting in person to virtual and let go of all of our firmly held notion that only meeting in person is the best and we can't do it virtual, which we've now all proven is very, very different. So the first place I would stand is I've got some kind of imposter syndrome. But the second thing I would say to people is mostly people know it as doubting themselves. That's how it shows up, as questioning or doubt. That's kind of the norm. But Dr. Valerie Young put out a great book where she talks about different characteristics of imposter syndrome. So for example, if you are a perfectionist, if you need to get things 100% right 100% of the time, if you ruminate on it for days when you miss that insanely high mark, you're a perfectionist. If you hate asking for help and think you have to do it yourself, because if you ask for help, that shows that you're weak and people might find out you don't know what you're doing, that's imposter syndrome. If you, this is one of mine. Things always came easy to you. As a kid, everything came easy to me. So when things didn't come easy, I don't do them. That's a form of imposter syndrome where we don't want to take risks because our sense of validation comes with our ability to do something easily. So everybody's got it. We might not want it, but everybody's got it now more than ever.
Well, and with everything that you've addressed, right? So, what ends up happening is how we were raised, how our parents handled things, what they told us, what's just like lineage as far as religion or culture. I mean, those are the things, like when we're talking like theta healing, we're talking about those things that are on a cellular level that you're not even aware have affected you being in the imposter syndrome. Right? There are certain things that you can say, like where Jen's like, well, I've got this one, right? Like it's like, but the big thing is that if you're to do like traditional inquiry, that whole thing would be like, why do I do this? So I can heal it, so that I can change it, that type of thing. And the beautiful thing, like with theta healing, is we don't have to know why. We can just go and change it. If the person says yes, right? Like if the person, but awareness, which is what Jennifer is giving us, right, is to know whether or not there's something that we need to work on.
It's not just awareness though, that Jen's giving you. It's not just awareness, because what I have said to everybody is there's some originating incident. With all the beliefs that we have, those firmly held beliefs, there always goes back to an originating incident. It's not just, that's part of it, is how we were raised and where our education was, but that's additive. There's those moments, for example, for me, where my imposter syndrome started, I was 6. And it's always some innocuous event. There I was in the playground and a boy me and my best friend chose her over me. And she was this petite, blonde, blue-eyed girl. And I was always much taller. I had black hair, dark eyes. I was never going to be like her. So I'll just be the funny sidekick. And if you look at the history of my career, it's always been about pushing other people forward until I went into business for myself, until I discovered that and chose to go into business for myself, because finally I unlocked that brain pattern. And then I could begin to see the triggers and early warning signs. I had a client who, her whole thing was, she was 9, comes home from school with a C. And her dad goes, "What's with the C?" "Well, Dad, it's average." "What do you mean average? Give me 1,500 words on average." And bam, she becomes a perfectionist, because it's always about not experiencing the experience of shame or guilt or embarrassment, right? She was embarrassed. I want to avoid that. Let me make sure everything's perfect. Never going to get another C, which can also be a superpower to propel us to great heights. Except when you begin to manage people, it sucks for them, because you have these insane marks for them, and you beat yourself up when you don't meet your insanely high mark. So it's like front of the hand and back of the hand, superpower, and also disempowering at the same time. So once we unlock where that brain pattern gets put together, then we can heal it. But as you said, someone has to want to unlock it.
Well, and also be aware that there's something, and not like this is the event that needs to be unlocked, right? But like, this isn't how I want to be, right? This isn't
right. It's not
me.
serving me. This has been coming up again and again. It's disempowering me. And so once we can, what I do is generally I take people through an embodied meditation to come back to that originating incident for people.
So we know that everybody has it. What does it do to our confidence and our integrity?
Well, let's talk about those two things separately. So if, let's say, one of the characteristics of being an imposter is being an expert, you want to be an expert, and that propels people to get a lot of degrees, a lot of certifications, a lot of training. But when some people calls you an expert, usually we're like, oh, no, 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 that was just luck. That wasn't me. So you actually can't own your expertise. So in terms of your confidence, it absolutely robs you of, first of all, it robs the other person from their gift that they're giving you to acknowledge you. When you say no, 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 and you give that gift back. Number two, it's robbing you of accepting that gift as a contribution to who you are, not out of arrogance, but a resonance, because spirit, the universe, God, your dog, whatever you want to call it, up to you and your belief system, is showing you a mirror that, oh, you are an expert in this area. But the key is the work that I do. The villain is the voice in your head. That's the massive villain, is the voice in our head. And so that voice in our head, that tells us we missed that insanely high mark, that we're not an expert, that we need more, that we shouldn't ask for help. It's a massive lack of confidence, but we can seem confident at the outside, except that's totally inauthentic. It's like icing hiding mud. We don't feel authentic, right? That's you're not aligned, you're not congruent with who you really are. From an integrity standpoint, when you're not being true to yourself, it lacks integrity, because really the ultimate integrity, there's a great training school in India called the Maliwada Training and Development School. And I always share this quote with clients about how when a person is in alignment with who they truly are, it doesn't matter what society's saying or doing. It's not like you're going to ignore society, but you know who you are. It's almost like you have this taproot sunk deep into the earth, and you're like, okay, I get you don't agree with me, but I know who I am. I understand what you're saying about me, but I know that's not true about me. And so I don't have to get upset with you. I can just say, that's actually not true. So both of those things, it knocks us off kilter because we go out of alignment with who we truly are.
Absolutely. And I feel like that, especially when people have experienced trauma, or, have had a lot of chaos, which we are right now, right? For some people, not all. Are, in these last 6 months, people have really had to look at some things. It really is just, we're looking at, like, where are we out of integrity? That, to me, that's where the imbalance is. It's like, where am I not walking my talk? Where am I not? And especially if you've grown up with any addiction in your childhood, people didn't always do what they said. And so then that is, where we, you know, integrity either becomes very important for us or not at all. And again, all of those, for everything, we're just looking for the gray. We're just looking for the balance, no extremes. Let's just
Yeah.
be in the middle. And all of these types of things are what really knock us out and also bring in that self-doubt. When I work with clients, we talk about the doubter. And the thing is that doubt is not intended to cause fear. Doubt is intended for us to come up with a plan B or C, that there's a possibility that something may not work. There's a possibility, and so, it really does lend to that, so that we can be in our integrity, that we can have confidence, that we can be okay with doubt and it not, knock us off our axis, so to speak.
Yeah. One thing I want to expand or unpack a little bit is this word trauma, because I think, I myself have been a victim of sexual assault. And was that a trauma back then? Absolutely. But I think sometimes people hear the word trauma, and I'm not discounting anybody who's been a victim of any type of trauma. But I also think that it can be very traumatic if you figure out that you have joint custody of your child, and all of a sudden they can't go to preschool today. And how are you going to get the work done that you plan to get done because you now are going to be with your 3-year-old or 4-year-old? That can be traumatic. So I think sometimes when people relate to trauma, they play down. They play it down. Well, I didn't have anything that big happen to me. It doesn't matter. As you said, it's anything that knocks you off your axis. That can be traumatic. It can be, I early on, and I think it was Chris, who was the reporter who's in New York who had COVID early on CNN, and his brother is the governor of New York, Chris Cuomo. one of the things he talked about was the psychological impact of being in a room by himself when his wife and kids were upstairs. And he said, nobody's talking about the psychological impact. That was back in March. And that's when I began. And I think you began really talking about the impact, the psychological impact of dealing with living by yourself or dealing with yourself or living with your spouse. If you were always someone who traveled and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, or you're used to leaving work at the office and now you don't have an office to leave it at, or you're used to having separation from your children for some amount of time, or your partner, spouse, for, or your whatever, for some amount of time during the day, or you're an extrovert and you really love being around people. Now, for me, I'm an extroverted introvert. Where I get my energy is being by myself. So I was like, I love the time by myself, right? However, okay, I'm single. I have 2 cats. That's great. I live in a big high rise, so I see people from time to time, but where I would kind of get my spark back is every couple of days I'd go see, I'd go to happy hour with friends, or I'd see friends to get myself out of the house, because there could be times when I'm sure the same way, all of a sudden like 2 days would go by and you're thinking to yourself, I've been so busy working, I haven't left home. When now you can't do that. Now you have to be intentional about separating work from home. So I just want to make sure that when we say the word trauma, that people aren't doing a comparative analysis based on some huge, trauma that other people are having, because the smallest thing can be traumatic, especially right now. And I'm sure you can speak to this from a theta energy healing work, which is, it's not just our own healing work, but we're also, if you're empathic like we are, you're feeling it from the world of everybody's like intense, discord and dissonance, and noticing it's not yours and making sure, you're not taking on everybody else's crap, quite honestly.
Preach, Jen, preach. That's the thing. And that's another thing that I say, trauma's relative. And so, it can be something that maybe doesn't bother your neighbor. It doesn't matter. They're not you.
Right.
So
That's
it is,
good.
as I say, like, if it's your mom was 5 minutes late picking you up from preschool, so, and that's your trauma, that's your trauma. It is what it is.
Right.
Typically, there's something underneath that caused that, or even, but that's okay. You can just say, this is my trauma for today. This is my real, this is my truth. And,
Yeah.
And it is. And again, there's no degrees, or mine's worse than yours, or it doesn't matter. Again, what Jen was talking about earlier, if it causes those effects, like in your brain and in your chemistry, it's trauma. It's causing this.
Yeah, it's not a competition, right? And I think also in your brain and your chemistry, in your body, right? If you feel dis-ease in your body, and always checking in with your body to see where that dis-ease is it, right? Where is it located? So I was speaking with one of my clients, and as we were doing some work, she kept doing this. And I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I don't know, I have a pain in my back. And I looked at her and I said, do you feel like you got stabbed in the back? She was like, oh, that's what's going on. I feel like nobody's on my side. And I'm okay, well, let's unpack that piece, right? So I'm sure you do that kind of work too with your clients.
Well, it's just about, which is why we work with other people, because as individuals and just being in our humanness, we don't see the forest for the trees. We can't see ourselves. Like, she probably didn't even know she was doing that, right? But she was doing it. And then Jen asked the question about it, which is so lovely to have that reflection. And it's always nice to work with somebody who's a little intuitive, that can kind of see, like, and know, like, that's what this is, and then go, right? And it's like, I could have had a V8 moment going, how did I not realize that or see that? And I promise you, more than likely what Jen's client did is probably didn't hear what she said, like, in the next minute, because her mind was going through, like, why that was true for her, like, like a moving picture, like flashes of incidences over time that it happened, that was true for her. And so it's always so interesting, because again, we're working with 11% of our brains here, and we know what we know.
Yeah.
And so it's always nice when we can get a perspective. And that's also what the collab is about, folks. It's so that you can go, like, well, I don't have anything around imposter syndrome. I bet you've just heard something that maybe kind of went, something you had that moment, something that just made you go, or around somebody else. So by all means, if this is speaking to you or speaking to you about somebody else, please share this. Please tag people so that they can have a bit of insight and get a little bit of theta healing work here at the end around it. But so that, again, have this awareness, because there are no mistakes if you're watching this, or there are no mistakes if you are, if somebody shares this with you. Right. It's like, that's the beautiful thing right now, is that although it doesn't feel like we're in synchronicity, it is so much, so many synchronicities happening. So Jen, how can women overcome imposter syndrome?
It's honestly the same way that men can. And what's interesting is so let me unpack one piece, which is we call it imposter syndrome, but it's not a psychological syndrome that you can get tagged with like ADHD or ADD or something like that. It's a misnomer to call it a syndrome. When this was coined back in the 70s, it was two women who were doing the research. And at the time, they thought more women than men had it, because men have the testosterone, which is also known as the confidence hormone. But since continuing to do research over the last number of decades, what we found is that people have it of equal amounts. Anybody of any age can get it. And there's the way to break the habit, right? Because a habit is simply a belief that you have, and you keep thinking it's true over and over and over again. So it's a brain pattern, right? So something happens, like I talked about my incident when I was a kid, or a trauma, we spoke about that, or the preschool that you spoke about, or my friend who came home with the C, or my client that came home with the C on her report card. Something happens, and in that moment, your brain feels threatened. And in that moment makes up a story, because it feels threatened, because it's experiencing something it doesn't, the body that the brain's a brain of is experiencing something it doesn't want to experience: shame, fault, blame, embarrassment, anything that's reactive below the line of presence. So in those moments, we establish this belief that, okay, I'm never going to be embarrassed again. Then the brain's on high alert. Is that going to embarrass me? Is that going to embarrass me? If I do that, will I get embarrassed? Will I get embarrassed there? At the same time, it can protect us like a smoke alarm, because it'll let us know. It's sort of like when you say with your clients, oh, are you that doubt? There's nothing wrong with that doubt. It could be propelling us to great heights. Same with something like anxiety. Anxiety, doubt, the moments that caused imposter syndrome can be your superpowers as well. Where the issue comes in is when you let it disempower you. So number one is get to the originating incident. Identify that. Number two, and this is the work I do with my clients, it's a three sessions. So I have a webinar people can watch. They take a quiz, they watch a webinar, come into the first session with me, having done at least a 10-minute version of this embodied meditation. I find out what happened, and then we do another meditation if needed to get really back to the source of it. And we do something very similar that you were speaking about, which is, okay, describe the scene to me like you're describing a scene in the movie. When you talked about that person going blank, stabbed in the back, is not thinking, because they're thinking about their whole life across that, like a moving picture, right? Once we're able to get it, we disrupt that brain pattern. And then between sessions 2 and 3, the job of my clients is to be an observer in life. Let me observe where that gets triggered. Is it only triggered by men? Because it was my dad that said that to me. Does it get triggered by women? Does it get triggered one-on-one, in big groups? And where do you feel it in your body? So they come back to session 2, having identified all the triggers, warning signs, and we kind of dial those in. We also look at, all right, now, all of that is reactive below the line, right? So if this is being present, the average human brain has 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. 80 to 85% are negative. And the other positive ones are still reactive, because you can walk outside, if you're me, and smell fresh cut grass and be taken back to my childhood where dad used to cut the grass. And I'd sit outside with him while he was drinking a beer, and I'd always ask for a sip of beer, and he'd always look to see if my mom was around, and he'd give me a sip of beer. And that was a great memory of being with my daddy, right, when I was growing up. But it's still all reactive. So once you start noticing the triggers, then instead of being triggered, oh, I have a trigger. Okay, the moment you can identify that, then you're present. When we're present, we have presence. Presence of what? Presence of mind, body, soul, spirit. Mind to think clearly, body to embody the kind of leader we want to be, soul to speak our truth, and spirit, God, your dog, whatever, to move through you. So we then look at practices that will get us solidly above the line in the creative section. All right, so it gets a trigger when someone in authority says, hey, come to my office. So in that moment, notice you have the trigger. How do you want to show up? Well, I guess I could show up with curiosity. Maybe I don't really know what that person's about to ask me. Well, not in the office, on a Zoom call now. So maybe I could just come from curiosity. So then we create practices and experiment with those practices between sessions 2 and 3. Session 3, we dial it in. So that's the hard work, let's say, of those 3 sessions of dialing it in. And then it's the ongoing lifetime of practice of showing up in alignment, congruent with who you truly are. One of my values, core values, is playfulness. So if I can't bring fun to something, I don't want to do it. And when I'm getting serious about things, I know playfulness has gone out the window. So how do I, and that when I get triggered, playfulness goes bye-bye. So how do I keep bringing myself above the line, right? Above the line to bring playfulness and joy and compassion and curiosity to everything that I'm doing.
So does it ever go away?
Imposter syndrome? No, that's normal, that, right? So does doubt ever go away? No. Now, the particular flavor of doubt might go away. That particular flavor. The thing I love on one hand about imposter syndrome and why I'm so enamored with it and why I've become an expert in this is because if you don't have some form of imposter syndrome, you're not playing a big enough game, in my view. Because every time we stretch, every time we grow, every time we take a new risk, we start a new relationship, we buy a new computer, we buy a new car, we move to a new house, COVID hits, all of a sudden we're being tasked with something. We're being asked to be a bigger version of ourselves that we've never been before. So you need this foundation of congruence, workability, and integrity to support that. So that taproot has to get sunk deeper into the earth. All there ever is practice and mastery. And the hallmark of any master is they're never done. Yo-Yo Ma never stops practicing the violin. You're never going to stop practicing theta healing. You're always on the lookout for, how do I master this? How do I bring something else into it? And I think often as human beings, we want an end date. We want to end and know we're done with the work. Bad news is you're never done with the work. There's going to be places where you feel like you're going through the eye of a needle. And then you're sewing and you're sewing and you're sewing and, oh, I got to go through the eye of a needle again. And then I'm sewing and you know what I mean? There's those moments where you have to go through the eye of the needle, but that's necessary as part of being a part of a human being. If you want to grow and evolve and have wonderful relationships and really fulfill on what your soul brought you here to do.
You know, and I feel like, Jen, you know, and what you're saying is that this is the thing for most, no, I don't want to say most, for a lot of people, we don't stretch, right? Or we stay in our safe world. We stay in our control, right? And what we know how to handle everything, how, you know, everything. And so in order for us to serve more people, to be the gift that we are, to be in our zone of genius, I often said that I truly didn't stretch or step out of my comfort zone until I learned Theta Healing. And I already had 8 certifications up to that point, and I have 13 now total, because I'm always looking at myself. This is the deal. Like I always said, and not to discount it, but I always said I didn't get these certifications because I wanted the certificates, or I wanted to say, these are all my credentials. This is how I can help you. It was, you know, I honestly said, this is how F up I am. I need to work on myself. I want to work on myself. And then I realized that I could help people, and I wanted to. So, you know, it's always really interesting, but I wasn't a networker. I'm an introvert. I'm an ambivert. So
What does that mean? Ambivert, like either?
Right. That you like what you were saying, like I like to be by myself so I can, regenerate, and get reinvigorated. And then I want to go out and be with people. Most people, because I've said I'm an introvert and people look at me like I'm crazy, like I've got two heads. You're not an introvert. And I'm like, no, I'm not shy, but I'm an introvert.
I'm going to
Those
call
are two
myself an
different
ambivert
things.
now.
So,
Yeah.
right. And so, yeah, I saw a whole TED talk on ambivert. So it was like, yeah, so it's been around for a couple of years, but yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. So that's the thing is that, but my deal is because I'm an empath, I really don't like to be in big crowds. And believe me, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. As I say, we throw a fiesta for everything. And I've grown up around big crowds. And I've been around a lot. I come from a big family. Everybody lives here. I remember one time I invited a friend. I had a friend from Canada she was in town, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to put together a quick." I didn't live in Texas at the time, and I was like, it's my mom's birthday. I'm going to throw together a quick surprise party at one of my cousins' barbecue joint, and I'll just call a few people. Well, my idea of a small gathering and her idea of a small gathering were two completely different things. And I was like, oh, just some immediate family. I'm just going to invite some immediate family, which was like 30 to 40 people. That's a small gathering for my family. And she was just like, so this is a small gathering to you? And I went, yeah. And I worked in trade shows for years. Okay, trade shows are pure crowds.
Yep.
It's just always really interesting, as we get older and in our reflection and knowing, I was just like, oh my gosh, so, going to a networking event where you want me to actually connect with people was always like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I would literally come home and have to take a nap, right?
Mm.
Because that was just a lot for me. But Theta Healing allowed me to be able to continue to do it, to step out of my comfort zone, for it to not be traumatic. And actually, now at this point, it's like, it's no big deal. But until we do it enough to where we, get that constant, confirmation that it's okay, that it's good, that we've got this, it's, getting past the doubt or whatever it is that's going up for us, then, because people are always shocked again when people see me at a networking event, when we can attend them physically in person, they're shocked to know that it used to be a big deal for me.
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know and I'm like, okay, but until it would have been, or maybe I would have never done it. Of course, I wouldn't have had my business if I hadn't done it, right? Because this was before the internet kind of thing. This was right at the beginning. This is right at, so there wasn't a lot of like um internet marketing. It was more in-person marketing. So if I wanted to be able to have a business, and it's also like, how badly do I want something? How am I, if we're not changing our behaviors, if we're not looking for somebody like Jen or looking for somebody like me to want to change our behaviors, we don't have our why, or we don't have what we don't want it bad enough.
Mm.
So what is it that's motivating you to want it bad enough, to make an investment, to, look into self-growth, to address painful things of why possibly I may be an imposter, or we all are, right? But it's like, why am I feeling like this?
Yeah.
That's the big thing with like traditional psychotherapy, is it kind of opens up the wound and pour salt in it, and you kind of got to go through all of that. And there are other ways through like meditation, theta healing, where it can have some awarenesses without it being quite so painful. I know there's no pain in what I do, but and I'm talking with Jen's process, because I think sometimes when we do have some awarenesses, we kind of go, not that it's like, but it's kind of like, oh, ouch,
Yeah, it's like good news, bad news, I call it. And I think too, for people that are listening, there's a real distinction between therapy and coaching, right? So as a coach, our eyes are focused on the future. We are your accountability partner for the kind of person you want to show up being, for the work that you want to get done. But some of that includes going through the eye of the needle, whether you're using theta healing or whether you're doing the work with me to get back to the originating incident. See, that's the piece for me of always bringing playfulness in, because as a comedian, someone said to me, and it was so good that they asked this, like, how do you integrate humor into coaching? And I said, well, there's always this point where you're coaching a client and things get a little bit tense because they're getting to that point where they're really going to have a big pop and a big breakthrough. And it can go one of two ways. They can resist you and push it away. Or what I have found through the work I do is I can say one little thing that kind of has them lighten up and realize it's not so serious. So bring some play into it. And then they sort of, it's like either pushing it away or embracing what's happening. And then they lean into it and embrace what it is that we're chatting about. But you have to have that nuance of being able to like take a little bit of the wind out of the intense sail that they're sailing so that they can own our crap, honestly, because often I think people too shy away from doing this kind of work because they're afraid of all the bad news they're going to find out. Listen, there's not any bad news you're going to find out except for how you've been sabotaging yourself. You're not a bad human at all. There are places where if you were a big house, there's a great book. I don't know if you've read this one. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford. It's an old book from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And what she talks about is that she equates us as like rooms in a house, and there's rooms that there's light that we always travel in. But there's rooms that are dark that are locked and we never venture to dare go in there, maybe visiting past traumas or thinking about, well, why was I laid off of that job? Or thinking about maybe just a simple interaction you had with a barista at Starbucks where you were rude because you were in a bad mood or something was misunderstood. But at the time you felt like you were on the right track. And now in retrospect, you're like, oh, I was a little bit rude. So all those different moments, what we want to do is unlock those doors so that you can see there's actually a lot of light in there. Owning our shadow as well as our light is all the yin yang of being a human. I'm trying to make the yin yang, but I can't, of being
Imagine
human.
it. Yes.
Yeah. And digging into those shadows and opening up those opportunities so that you as your own house can go into every room and not have to worry about what monster might be lurking behind the door.
Absolutely. Because that's the big thing. That again, everybody's on their own journey and how they choose to do it. And I often say there are many roads to get us where we want to go. It depends on what type of process, where we're at, what we want to do.
Yep.
And mine just happens to be very quick, painless, and bypasses the brain so you don't have to be in your head so much about it. But that's not for everyone. And that's okay. And I might not even be the theta healer for, I'm not for you. I was going to say for everyone, but for you, but there are others, right? So we have, or there are other processes, there are other people. I think that that's the biggest thing. And I often say this, in anything that you do, you got to vet who you have and interview and understand what's important and know what fits for you. People have spent a lot of money figuring out what doesn't work for them or who wasn't the right person for them. But then that also allows us to know what questions do we want to ask or what do we want? That's why, with people, when I have clients that come in, Jen, they know what they're doing and they know how they want it to be. They don't know the in between, which is fine. That's what 14 years I've been doing this. I got that and I do it quickly, right? Because you work with anybody with intuition, right? When Jen was saying, about the knife in the back kind of thing, it just makes it a whole lot easier. And, I also think too, when we look, I'm going to open this up too. October is going to be a difficult month. I think it's going to make people feel crazier than what they already are. I don't want to plant that in, but some people who I've said this to have felt some relief in knowing that it's not truly them that's going crazy or feeling like a little discombobulated or a little confused. A lot of people I think at this point are like, wow, 6 months into quarantine, this is, I'm going crazy. But I think it's just the whole timing of everything. And as we're just reaching, and not that it has anything to do with the election, it's just the timing of it all. It's falling in that away. And I think those of us who are here in the US, it's kind of veering it towards that. And it is what it is. So I just want to put that out there. So when you do, and again, the gift of it is, it's bringing up what we need to look at.
Yep. And that's so important what you just said. I think if we approach it from, oh, this is a gift. My first book, it's called When I Die, Take My Panties, Turning Your Darkest Moments into Your Greatest Gifts, because it's all about learning to embrace everything that comes out to us as a gift and that there is a lesson for us to learn, because in a sense, our soul is attracting it to teach us that lesson, which is why people get into the same kind of relationships, the same kind of situations at work. If you find yourself in, kind of Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray found himself in the same day over and over again, it's because there's a lesson here for you to learn that you haven't learned yet. What is that? We don't know. And I would bet for you and I, as probably for me, and I'm assuming for you, we don't have the answers either, but we're going to facilitate the unlocking by asking questions of whatever it is. I was on a client right before this and I asked a question. She goes, "That's a really good question." I said, "I'm a coach." She goes, "Yeah, that would be weird if you asked bad questions." I'm like, "That would, but it'd be a very funny YouTube channel. Bad coaching. Tune in for the next edition of Bad Coaching, But we're going to ask questions that allow you to look at something from a very different perspective and probably a place you haven't seen it before. And we don't even know what those questions are going to be because it is intuitive, right? You're like, okay, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm going to ask you this question. Oh my
Also a big
God.
thing, right? Like with the questions, with the making it aware. And that's really what I love. And I think that that's what makes me a little bit different in the process that I do, is we just go ahead and change it. Because having the awareness, changing it allows things to be different. And that's why I always, I love for people, no matter what they do for a living, to learn theta healing and implement it in what they do so that they can have that quick change. And it's not a bad thing. We're not bypassing anything. It's healing and we're changing it so that people can get through quicker what they want to and be able to have the gift of what's the result of any program that they're in, that they're paying for, that they want to have success in, right? Because the bigger thing, and it's like, and it just comes with me just saying that, people aren't afraid of failing. They know how to do that well. People are afraid of succeeding.
But they say they're afraid of failing.
Right.
Which is not the case.
It's always right. It's never the case. Listen to me, as Jen and I are both saying this, it is never the case.
No matter how much you believe it.
Yeah. It's just it's the story. And the truth is that when you get to that, then things unfold. Then things, then we get to the root. Then we understand what we need to look at. People are always shocked to know this about themselves because of the story that they've always had. And we always hear that, and you always think, and it sounds like that would make sense. Like people would be more afraid to fail.
Yep. Yep.
No, that's not what's going on. And
right.
I'm going to say 9.9 times out of 10, right? That's not what's going on. So, again, tag people, share this. I think we've shared some pretty interesting information.
We're an awesome hot pink team today.
Exactly.
Funny story about the hot pink. By the way, I saw Wit on your show, was it last week or the week before? And she always, she always has the jewelry and everything. And I was channeling Wit. I'm like, okay, hot pink. And she and I had a call earlier. She's like, you need to wear hot pink more often. I said, I knew you were going to say that. I wore this in honor of you. I never wear this shirt. Never. I'm usually in blue. I'm like, let me go with a hot pink today.
I'm usually in black to just blend, but I got to tell you, it's been like that morning and I'm like, I got hot pink on. I'm wearing hot pink. And then Jen showed up in hot pink and I said, we are just in our hot pinkness for you. So
yes.
Pay attention. We're giving you some good info.
Yeah. Magenta moments.
So let's do a little bit of work, So I'm just going to tell you, Jen, just so you know, and I'll have to laugh. This was with Whitney. Whitney can talk. She's got the gift of gab and she's amazing. If y'all did not see my co-live last week, boy, did she give some great information as well. And she's fascinating. And again, she's also funny as well. I like funny women. What can I say? So I was doing the work, and the big thing is like in the co-live, you have to say yes. Theta healing is very complimentary in any process that anybody does and anything, right? But also you have to say yes. So it's very respectful. You're not going to get any work done on you that you don't agree to. So it's not like everybody in the world that's watching this is getting this work, or anybody that happens to be on Facebook is getting this work. You have to say yes out loud. So I'm doing this, and again, my co-live guest speakers are cue the yeses, right? She wasn't. And I'd be like, Whitney, say yes. She was like, I'm fascinated with what she was speechless with what I was doing, which was making me laugh. And I was like, okay, pay attention. We've got a show on going on here, Whitney. It was so funny. So just so you know, you're going to be cueing the yeses, Jen.
Okay, cool. I'm a yes. I'm always a yes to working with you. Yes.
But what the yes, saying it out loud does is it lets our brain know, because our brain's got to buy into this, right? Like, oh, okay, your divine, whoever your divine being is, whoever that is for you, God, the universe, goddess, there are a million names, whoever that is for you, also needs to know, and the universe needs to know this. Like, okay, he or she is saying yes, they want this work. They can have it, right? Because they're saying yes.
Yep.
So we always make sure that there are 3 beliefs in place before doing any theta healing work, or I do. I don't want to say we, I don't know who we is. Well, Chula is sitting on my lap, and she is my assistant. That's my dog, for those of you who don't know. But it's just me. So I want an instant healing. I deserve an instant healing, and an instant healing is possible. What theta healing does is very quick. And if we don't believe that we want, deserve, or that it's possible to have an instant healing, then it's going to slow down what I can do for you. So if you would like those, just say yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
So let's remove the obligation to have imposter syndrome, which means that we don't automatically do it, right? Obligation means no choice. So that we have a choice in this, which means that we can be aware of it, know that it's possible within ourselves to change it, right? But if we just are in that obligation, it's like, well, I got no choice. Why do I even need to look at it?
Very
We
good.
also want to forgive ourselves for having imposter syndrome, and we want to forgive whoever is our divine power, whoever we feel like is a player in this, right? Like maybe a teacher, a parent, whoever, somebody from church, whatever. So who is that we need to forgive, that was a contributor to us and our imposter syndrome? And then also just getting the definition of it so that we understand it. You can read a book about it, or you can get that divine definition, so that, again, helps you recognize it innately, like, instead of having to think about it all the time. So if you would like those, just say yes out loud.
Yes, yes, yes.
We also want to know, just from that universal truth, so to speak, that of how it serves us to address imposter syndrome for ourselves. Like, what would be the result? What would be the gift? What would be the lesson that's possible? So we want to change that. By addressing this, only bad will come as a result of it. We want to be able to be in an awareness and hold space that something good absolutely will come out of it. We also want to change what would prevent us from stepping out of our comfort zone. We want to change what would prevent us from stretching. We also want to change that it is only up to us to do this work, right? So I got to do it by myself. I have to, because I promise you, you're not going to be able to see as much if you choose that road, and it'll also make it a lot longer and harder. I'm just going to say that. So if you would like those, just say yes out loud.
Yes.
And something a little bit different, maybe it's because we've got such a special guest today, is from whoever is your divine being. Sharing, like, just so that you know the gift that you are.
Mm.
So to change what would prevent you from recognizing that and knowing it and being aware of it, and then allowing it to be like, have you bathe in it so that it goes into every part of your being, so that it will give you the motivation, the strength, the drive to be forward in your journey and serve and help the people that need you, that want you. So if you would like that, just say yes out loud.
Yes.
And just as a reminder, right? So you can, tag this, watch it later, rewatch it if you want to have this last little bit of experience, because it was kind of sweet. And you also will get any of this work on a replay. All you have to do is say yes out loud. So tag people, share it, let them know. All you have to do is just say yes at the end, because you'll get all of that. I need to say it at the beginning. But I get so caught up I start like picturing like the work that needs to be done. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're on a Facebook Live. I might want to share with them that you will get the work on the replay as well. So I know that Jen had mentioned that there is a way to take a quiz, right? To discover. So what will they get from the quiz, Jen, by taking it?
So the quiz, if they go, excuse me, hold on. That's so interesting because that comes out of the work we just did, because I can feel my throat opening up. And as a side note, when you did the thing about knowing you're a gift, in my head, what I was picturing was, it's not, I mean, I think people would know this, but to say this is I might be the one doing the Facebook Live with you, but the work we're doing is for the world. It's very transpersonal. It's not specific and personal to me. So I just wanted to put a pin in that. But you go to jencokenquiz.com, JenCokenQuize. No, QIZ. Oh my goodness.
You spell check on it before you do it. It's all
Where's
good.
Grammarly? Wait, yeah. Grammarly, where'd you darn it?
I don't know how to spell quiz. That's okay.
Take a vowel off. So jencokenquiz.com. It's like a 5-minute quiz, which will ask you specific questions that are distinct with each of the 5 types of imposter syndrome. So, and then that gets sent to me and to you, so you can kind of see what the nuances are. Then in addition to that, you can go to my website and I have a webinar. It's $27. It's a recorded webinar with a worksheet that you can do, which I take you through this embodied meditation. The reason to do the quiz first is kind of give you a frame of reference. And then you go through the webinar, and you've been on that webinar or seen it too, because I did one for the Dames, which is the group that we're a part of. So people can do the embodied meditation. And if people want to, they can then go work with me for 3 sessions. And if you want to work with me, just give me a note, because I realize what I should do is I'm going to do a ThetaHealing code where you can get $500 off of the cost of doing 3 sessions with me. So I just have to create that. And in fact, I'm going to go in further and do ThetaHealing on the webinar so you can get it for free, but I got to go do those codes because I forgot to do them before this. So I apologize. Yeah.
Well, we get a lot of views afterwards, so it'll be set up by the time you guys see this. It's all good. And as it gets, we'll have a YouTube channel, be on my YouTube channel and everything else. So you'll always be able to get this. And of course, we'll put it in the comments as well.
Okay, good. And I'll send you the codes, Brenda, once I figure out which ones I'm going to do. Okay.
That's right. To be determined. It's all good, guys. And again, I always say, you can always get a hold of me if you'd like to speak to me about ThetaHealing, about Jen Coken, about imposter syndrome, all of that, like or remind me again what her website is. I often say, chatwithbrendab.com. You can always set up a little time to chat with me. And I'm always happy. I love to share resources. I meet a lot of people. I've been an entrepreneur for 28 years. I know lots of peeps. So don't feel like that you're going to come on my call and I'm going to, hard sell you on Theta Healing. Talk to me and I can tell you out, who I know, if it's not me,
Right.
and help you. And I
Right.
love to do that. Also, I've got a 5-day challenge coming up that is activate your inner money magnet. So it's in my Wealth 5 acceleration group. It's a new group and we've got that in the post. It starts October 19th. My hope is for people to see how quickly things can change for you with Theta Healing, and also maybe consider it as something that you want to implement in what you're already doing, or possibly have a conversation with me so I can help you see that if you want to consider it. Again, I always say I'm a soft touch. I just want to give you information. I believe that knowledge is power. And then you get to make your decisions on whatever you choose to do. And I also have a free meditation that's 1 minute to draw money to you, but it's based on intention. So if money's not what you want, if it's relationship or balance, you make that your intention, you've got it. I say do it first thing in the morning, last thing in the evening. Give me 2 minutes of your day for 30 days, and you will see a huge difference. I just want people to be able to experience how quick things can change for you if you'd like for it to be. So come join the group, take the quiz, find out more about yourself, see what else Jen has to offer you. And Jen, is there anything else that you want to add?
Just thank you for having me on today. It's always just a joy and a pleasure to co-create with you. And I just love you and think you're amazing and just appreciate being here.
Back at ya. So guys, also, let's see, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, let's see. Next week, thank you, Brenda. Like, stay on the thing here. So, where's my little thing here? Always Wednesdays, always 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And next week is Roseanne Reed, and we will be doing the shifts needed to put your dreams into action. I always love how everything just kind of piggybacks off of everything. I don't do this on purpose, but apparently I do on some intuitive level, right? And so, it allows us, like with everything that we get done, with everything and the people that you meet and the opportunities that you have to be able to work and learn things, just expands and keeps building. That's why you want to keep watching the co-lives. So Jen, thank you again for being my
You're
featured
welcome.
guest, for
You're
making
welcome.
people aware and doing it in such a fun way.
Oh, you're welcome. My
And we'll
pleasure.
get all of those links for you guys. Okay.
Awesome.